Ghost Movies Top 10. Hello, my name is Chloe and I am your ghostly host tonight. Prepare yourself for a cinematic experience like no other, as we explore haunted mansions, cursed families, and the terrifying secrets that lie beyond the veil of the living. From the iconic classics to modern masterpieces, these ghostly tales will leave you breathless and trembling in fear. So grab your courage, hold tight to your sanity, and join us on this unforgettable journey into the heart of darkness. But beware. Once you enter, there's no turning back. 10. The Woman in Black, 2012. Director, James Watkins. There's not much to this 2012 modern Hammer horror film, nothing unique about it, but it's quite competently assembled. With that said, you could argue that simply producing a ghost story this traditional in 2012 offered a bit of novelty. Daniel Radcliffe, fresh off his final Harry Potter appearance, took a role playing an adult as Arthur Kipps, a Victorian-era lawyer who travels to the country to negotiate the sale of a house that is revealed to be haunted by the spirit of the woman in black. This CGI spectre has a particular fondness for targeting children, and the film becomes a mystery in the placate this restless spirit and set her free mold. It offers a few fun twists and turns, and evokes classic British haunted house movies of the past, as Radcliffe stalks through dark, cobwebbed rooms with a flaming candelabra to light his way. The ending is a bit derivative of Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell, but all in all this is a better than average classical ghost story. 9. Ju-on, The Grudge, 2002. Director, Takashi Shimizu. The Grudge, along with Ringu, are the two most prominent examples of Japanese horror from their time period to make an impact in the American psyche, as both were soon adapted into American versions. There's nothing particularly revolutionary in its interconnected series of tales involving people menaced by the ghosts of a murdered family, but damn if its depiction of the child spirit of Toshio in particular didn't become a symbol of the entire Japanese horror genre. Its stories of punishment may be on the conventional side, but the appearance and art direction that went into creating its creepy kid have been an undeniable influence on pretty much all the ghost movies that have come along since. 8. The Amityville Horror, 1979. Director, Stuart Rosenberg. The original Amityville Horror might be one of the least striking or unique films to ever inspire more than a dozen follow-ups. Seriously, there are to date more than 20 films that have been made with Amityville in the title. Its story is basic and primordial. Family moves into a new house, but things go bump in the night. Every haunted house trope is well represented, from secret rooms and unseen hands to disembodied voices and spiritual possession. If anything, the film overloads itself with concurrent, dueling reasons for the haunting, ranging from Indian burial ground to site of satanic rituals, never really settling on a central theme. It's just a pure popcorn haunting picture, famous for its blood-oozing walls but otherwise merely competent as your standard bit of October distraction. Perhaps it was the iconic shape of the house itself that seared itself into the cultural consciousness? No matter the reason, the Amityville Horror has been hard to shake. 7. Ouija, Origin of Evil, 2016. Director, Mike Flanagan. While the first Ouija was a workmanlike, paint-by-numbers cash grab without a single original touch, its prequel, directed by tried-and-true horror fan and prolific genre filmmaker Mike Flanagan, bears the aesthetic of 60s horror. From the use of the era's Universal logo to a faded, sepia pastel look, Origin of Evil bears witness to Flanagan having fun with the creative possibilities of the project. As intriguing as all that stuff is for genre purists and cinephiles, the whole thing would still crumble if the overall tone and performances didn't match Flanagan's ambitions. Thankfully, he delivers a wholly satisfying piece of PG-13 horror that deftly mixes the modern sensibilities of the genre with tried-and-true stylistic approaches from its origins. 6. The Fog, 1980. Director, John Carpenter. If you're a horror fan, it's hard not to love the basic premise of The Fog, with its billowing clouds of white vapor that bring swift death along with them. John Carpenter's follow-up to Halloween had a somewhat larger budget to work with, and the practical effects looked great as a result, although it wasn't as successful at the box office. Regardless, The Fog is a superior film from a production standpoint, reuniting Carpenter with Jamie Lee Curtis, albeit in a less important role. It concerns a Californian coastal town that is celebrating its 100th anniversary when dark secrets from the 1800s begin to emerge. Turns out that the city fathers committed some pretty serious crimes against humanity, and now a crew of restless revenants has returned to dish out some much-deserved revenge. Caught up in the madness is Adrienne Barbeau, Carpenter's wife of the time, debuting on screen in the role that would make her a scream queen figure for decades. There's simply a great sense of atmosphere in The Fog, especially in the dense, otherworldly way that the glowing banks of fog move throughout town, amplified by a signature John Carpenter synth soundtrack. Anyone who knows Carpenter would be able to pick out his unique style immediately. 5. House on Haunted Hill, 1959. Director, William Castle. Every William Castle movie has its own campy charms, but House on Haunted Hill is the guy's masterpiece. It's got it all: Vincent Price at his goofiest, a big spooky house, a mystery, and a profoundly non-frightening walking skeleton. The gimmick this time around was referred to by Castle as a mergo, and it amounted to a plastic skeleton on a pulley system being flown over the audience, not his most creative, but shameless enough that only Castle would stoop so low. To me, this is the quintessential 1950s horror film, even though it comes at the end of the decade. It's totally tame by today's standards but has some fun, over-the-top performances, a bit of witty dialogue, and a large helping of cheese. I can watch this thing over and over without ever getting tired of it. It's like horror comfort food. The colorized version is even more fun, replacing the static black and white original with an unrealistic palette of color-coded characters who will remind you of the cast of Clue. 4. The Innkeepers, 2011. Director, T. West. When you're working in indie horror, a big part of success is learning how to turn your budgetary limitations into a positive, to rely less heavily on effects and setting and more on characterization and filmcraft. T. West understands this better than most, which is part of what made his earlier House of the Devil so effective. The Innkeepers has some of the same DNA, but it's raw and more real, following the mostly unremarkable exploits of two friends, Sarah Paxton and Pat Healy, as they work in a dingy old bed and breakfast and conduct nightly paranormal research in their place of business. They're well cast and feel like two of the most real people you're likely to see in a horror film. West, acting in moments like a horror-tinged Tarantino, enjoys lingering on them during their conversations and small talk, which builds a sense of casual camaraderie to what are supposed to be longtime co-workers. Of course, things do eventually start going bump in the night, and the film ratchets up into a classically inflected ghost story. Some will accuse it of being slow, or of spending too much time dawdling with things that are unimportant, but that's mumblegore for you. Ultimately, the reality imbued into the characters justifies the time it takes to give them characterization, and you still get some spooky boo moments in the film's final act. 3. The Conjuring, 2013. Director, James Wan. Let it be known, James Wan is, in any fair estimation, an above-average director of horror films at the very least. The progenitor of big-money series such as Saw and Insidious has a knack for crafting populist horror that still carries a streak of his own artistic identity, a Spielbergian gift for what speaks to the multiplex audience without entirely sacrificing characterization. Several of his films sit just outside the top 100, if this list were ever to be expanded, but The Conjuring can't be denied as the one representative because it is far and away the scariest of all his feature films. Reminding one of the experience of first seeing paranormal activity in a crowded multiplex, The Conjuring has a way of subverting when and where you expect the scares to arrive. Its haunted house/possession story is nothing you haven't seen before, but few films in this oeuvre in recent years have had half the stylishness that one imparts on an old, creaking farmstead in Rhode Island. The film toys with audiences' expectations by throwing big scares at you without standard Hollywood jump scare build-ups, simultaneously evoking classic Golden Age ghost stories such as Robert Wise's The Haunting. Its intensity, effects work and unrelenting nature set it several tiers above the PG-13 horror against which it was primarily competing. It's interesting to note that The Conjuring actually did receive an R rating despite a lack of overt violence, war or sexuality. It was simply too frightening to deny, and that is worthy of respect. 2. Ringu, 1998 director, Hideo Nakata. The Hollywood remake of Ringu decided to use spectacle where Nakata's understated original used simple, bone-deep dread. The latter is a less visceral experience, but a far more unsettling one. Opening on the deadly haunting of a teen girl, the film then follows Asakawa, played by Nonoko Matsushima, a local TV reporter who files stories about urban legends. Trouble is, the campfire story about the VHS tape that curses you with death in 7 days isn't just a story. Filled with arresting imagery, chilling sound design, and cinematography that conveys the fear and paranoia of its doomed and desperate protagonists, it is easy to see why this progenitor of the Japanese horror genre took the West by storm. 1. The Sixth Sense, 1999 director, M. Night Shyamalan. Featuring great performances by Bruce Willis and Haley Joel Osment, along with a legitimately chilling atmosphere, The Sixth Sense was nothing short of a phenomenon when it hit multiplexes in 1999. Critical examination aside, it truly is a frightening film, from the scene where Cole is locked in a box with an abusive ghost to the little moments. For better or worse, though, this is the defining film of M. Night Shyamalan's career, and its success was a double-edged sword. It bestowed the brilliant young director label on him, but also pigeonholed his personal style as a writer to the extent that his next 5 features at least were all reshaped by the aftershocks of The Sixth Sense. Rarely has the danger of success been so clearly illustrated for an artist. Shyamalan crafted a scary film that still holds up today, and then spent most of the next decade chasing that same accomplishment with rapidly diminishing returns that have only recently been rehabilitated with the likes of Split. From the iconic twists of The Sixth Sense to the ghostly Ringu, these films promise to captivate and haunt your imagination long after the credits roll. Whether you're a seasoned horror aficionado or a newcomer to the genre, there's something for everyone in this chilling selection. Before you go, don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed our countdown of the top 10 ghost movies. And if you haven't already, subscribe.